One drop of blood. That's all she said she needed. One drop to run hundreds of medical tests, to revolutionize healthcare, to become the world's youngest self-made female billionaire. It was all a lie. And right now, from inside a federal prison, she's asking the President of the United States to set her free. But here's what's terrifying. She's already planning her next move. The year is 2003. Elizabeth Holmes is 19 years old, a sophomore at Stanford University, studying chemical engineering. She's brilliant, driven, and terrified of needles. That fear would birth an idea. What if you didn't need traditional blood draws? What if a single drop from a finger prick could run every medical test imaginable? Holmes dropped out of Stanford and founded a company. The pitch was seductive. No more vials of blood. No more expensive lab tests. Just a tiny prick, instant results, and healthcare would never be the same. By 2004, she'd raised $6 million. By 2010, over $90 million. By 2014, for $100 million. Her board of directors read like a who's who of American power. Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State. George Shultz, former Secretary of State. James Mattis, former Secretary of Defense. Betsy DeVos, Bill Frist, William Perry. These weren't just investors. These were America's most connected, most powerful people. And they all believed in Elizabeth Holmes. She had the look, black turtleneck, just like Steve Jobs. Intense, unblinking blue eyes. A deep, controlled voice that commanded attention.
We can make access to basic infrastructure and, in many cases, to more advanced infrastructure than is even currently available today in developed economies, available to people who are the most in need, in the same way that cell phones have leapfrogged over.
The media loved her. Forbes asterisk valued Theranos at $9 billion. Holmes herself was worth $4.5 billion. At 30 years old, she was a billionaire, a visionary, the future. By 2015, Theranos was everywhere. Walgreens, Safeway, your neighborhood pharmacy, real patients getting real tests. But here's what nobody knew. There was just one problem. The technology didn't work. This is the Edison Theranos revolutionary blood testing device. At least, that's what Elizabeth Holmes told everyone. The device was supposed to run over 200 tests from a single drop of blood. Everything from cholesterol to cancer markers. In reality, it could barely run a dozen tests. And even those were inaccurate. So what did Theranos do? They cheated. When investors came for demonstrations, Theranos would run tests on the Edison for show. But for actual patient results, they used traditional blood testing machines from Siemens, the same machines every other lab used. But here's where it gets really dangerous. In 2013, Theranos partnered with Walgreens. They opened wellness centers inside Walgreens stores across Arizona and California. Real patients, getting real tests, making real medical decisions. And the results were wrong. One patient was told she was having a miscarriage. She wasn't. Another was told his blood was dangerously thin. It wasn't. People were given the wrong cancer markers, the wrong hormone levels, the wrong everything. These weren't just numbers on a screen. These are lives. And inside Theranos, employees were starting to notice. Theranos had everyone sign ironclad NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. Speak out, and they'd sue you into oblivion. And they did. Theranos spent millions on lawyers. Intimidation was their weapon. Several employees quit. Most stayed silent, terrified of the legal and financial consequences. At the center of it all were two people, Elizabeth Holmes and her boyfriend, Sonny Balwani. Balwani was Theranos' chief operating officer. He was older, met Holmes when she was 18, and he was ruthless. Former employees described him as abusive, creating a culture of fear. Anyone who questioned the technology was labeled a problem. Together, they built an empire. An empire of lies. But empires fall. And this one was about to collapse. In journalism, there's a saying, follow the money. But in the Theranos story, you had to follow the patients. And two brave insiders were about to risk everything to tell the truth. What happened next wasn't just whistleblowing. It was war. September 2013, Tyler Shultz joined Theranos as a lab researcher. His grandfather, George Shultz, was on the board. Elizabeth Holmes was a family friend. Tyler was excited. This was going to change healthcare. Within weeks, he noticed something wrong. Test results were wildly inconsistent. Quality control reports were being altered. When he tested the same blood sample twice, he got completely different results.
Of running, 300 or whatever tests from a single drop of blood seemed grossly exaggerated. Working with the devices, and I would see that the variations of the results that it produces was very high. And then I started hearing about the quality controls failing, and this is with my colleagues who are running real patient samples. So they would run the quality controls for the day, and they would fail, and then some select cases they would be pressured to run patient samples anyway, even though we knew that the test wasn't functioning properly.
Tyler sent emails to Elizabeth and Sonny detailing the problems, explained the science, provided data. The response was swift and brutal. Sonny Balwani called him into a meeting and berated him for disloyalty. Elizabeth stopped responding to his emails. He contacted New York State regulators overseeing blood testing, submitted complaints, provided documentation. Then he told his grandfather. George Shultz didn't believe him. Elizabeth was like a granddaughter to him. She'd been to family dinners, holidays. George chose Elizabeth over his own grandson. Tyler wasn't alone. Erica Chung, a 25-year-old lab associate, had seen the same problems. Inaccurate tests, falsified quality control, dangerous patient results. She'd raised concerns internally, been dismissed, threatened with legal action if she spoke externally. So she did what Tyler did. She contacted regulators, and then both of them contacted a reporter. John Carreyrou, Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist for the Wall Street Journal. In early 2015, Carreyrou received anonymous tips about Theranos. Test inaccuracies, secret machines, fake demos. He started digging. He interviewed dozens of former employees under condition of anonymity because of the NDAs, reviewed internal documents, analyzed FDA reports. He traced the testing process. And Elizabeth Holmes knew he was coming. Theranos didn't respond with transparency. They responded with lawyers. They sent legal threats to Carreyrou. They tried to intimidate the Wall Street Journal. They even called Rupert Murdoch, who owned the journal and was a Theranos investor, to try to kill the story. To Murdoch's credit, he didn't interfere. On October 15, 2015, Carreyrou's article was published. The headline, "Hot startup Theranos has struggled with its blood test technology." The story detailed everything. The faulty machines, the secret use of commercial analyzers, the inaccurate patient results. The response was immediate. Theranos' valuation began to crumble. Partners started pulling out. Walgreens ended their partnership. Safeway, another partner, terminated their deal. Holmes went on the offensive. She appeared on CNBC, on Mad Money with Jim Cramer. She called the article false. She said Carreyrou had an agenda. She insisted the technology worked.
This is what happens when you work to change things. And first they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world. And I have to say, I personally was shocked to see that the journal would publish something like this when we had sent them over 1,000 pages of documentation demonstrating that the statements in their piece were false. But we're doing things differently, and we're working to make a difference.
But the government was now paying attention. The FDA Food and Drug Administration launched inspections. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services investigated the labs. Their findings were damning.
The Wall Street Journal reports on the front page that the Justice Department and the Securities and Exchange Commission are looking into whether the biotech startup misled investors, partners or government officials about its testing technology. Theranos, led by founder and CEO Elizabeth Holmes, promised fast, cheap, and accurate blood tests using drops of blood instead of vials. Last month, we spoke with Wall Street Journal investigative reporter John Carreyrou, who first broke the news of the company's problem.
In January 2016, CMS found that Theranos' Newark lab posed immediate jeopardy to patient health and safety. They voided 2 years of test results. Tens of thousands of patients had to be retested. By October 2016, Theranos closed its labs and wellness centers. The $9 billion company was worthless. Holmes stepped down as CEO. Break time equals 0. In September 2018, Theranos officially shut down. But this wasn't over. In June 2018, Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani were indicted on federal charges. Wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud. They had lied to investors. They had lied to patients. They had lied to everyone. The trial was coming. The trial of Elizabeth Holmes wasn't just about fraud. It became a test of whether Silicon Valley's fake it till you make it culture had gone too far, and whether a woman who'd lied to billionaires could convince 12 jurors that she was a victim. September 2021, after multiple delays, including the COVID pandemic and Elizabeth getting pregnant, the trial finally began in San Jose, California.
4 years of delays, the most anticipated white-collar trial in years is finally getting underway. The criminal fraud case against Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes, who arrived in court just moments ago.
The trial lasted nearly 4 months. The prosecution's case was straightforward. Holmes knowingly defrauded investors and endangered patients. She committed fraud. They presented emails, internal documents, testimonies from former employees. Investors testified they'd invested based on her representations. Walgreens executives said they relied on her claims about FDA approval and military use. Tyler Shultz testified. He described the culture of fear, the broken machines, the threats, the retaliation against whistleblowers. Erica Chung testified. She explained how test results were manipulated, how patient samples being retested dozens of times until they got a result that looked acceptable, about quality control failures being covered up. Patients testified about receiving false diagnoses. Then came Elizabeth's defense, and it was shocking. Elizabeth testified in her own defense. For 7 days, her strategy was to blame Sunny Balwani for everything and claim he'd psychologically, emotionally, and sexually abused her for over a decade. She testified that Sunny controlled what she ate, when she slept, how she dressed, that he was sexually abusive, that he manipulated her decisions about the company, that she was a victim too.
Special correspondent Scott Cohen has that story for us. And Scott, we are learning more about her possible defense.
We are, Deidre, and as you can see, it's quite the ticket here in San Jose. This is just jury selection for this trial, which is expected to last about 3 months. This new information comes in court documents, newly unsealed, where Holmes attempts to place the blame on Sunny Balwani. He was the Theranos chief operating officer and her ex-boyfriend. She claims that he abused her for a decade, monitoring her calls, texts, emails, physical violence, restricting her sleep, and insisting that any success she achieved was because of him, adding yet another dimension to the biggest white-collar fraud trial in years.
Prosecutors were ready. They showed emails Elizabeth sent about company strategy. Emails Sunny wasn't copied on, showed her making decisions independently, demonstrated she was the CEO, the founder, the ultimate authority. They played her own media interviews where she confidently defended Theranos technology, showed her TED Talk where she passionately described the science. If Sunny was controlling her, why was she so publicly confident? The jury didn't buy it. In January 3rd, 2022, after 7 days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Guilty. 4 counts of wire fraud, 1 count of conspiracy. She faced up to 20 years in prison. On November 18th, 2022, Elizabeth Holmes was sentenced. 11 years and 3 months in federal prison. Sunny Balwani was tried separately, guilty on all 12 counts. 13 years in prison. In May 2023, Elizabeth Holmes reported to a federal prison in Bryan, Texas.
These were the last moments of freedom for Elizabeth Holmes as she entered a Texas federal prison. It's where she'll spend tonight and potentially the next 11 years. A stunning fall from grace for the one-time tech superstar.
But Elizabeth wasn't done fighting. She filed appeals, requested to remain free while appealing, and she got pregnant, again, for the second time since being indicted. Legal experts noted the timing. Pregnant defendants are often allowed to delay prison to give birth and bond with the child. In February 2025, the appeals court rejected her arguments. Her conviction stood. Her sentence stood. She would serve her time. The woman who was worth $9 billion, who dined with presidents, who graced magazine covers. Now, federal inmate number 0340949. January 2026. Elizabeth Holmes has filed a formal clemency petition with President Donald Trump. Yes, you heard that right. From inside a federal prison in Texas, where she's serving 11 years for fraud. The woman who built a $9 billion lie is asking the President of the United States to set her free. And she might actually have a shot. Since taking office for his second term, President Trump has issued 92 pardons and 23 commutations. More than half for white-collar offenses, wide fraud, bank fraud, money laundering, tax evasion. In October 2025, Trump pardoned Changpeng Zhao, known as CZ, the founder of Binance, the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange. CZ had pleaded guilty to failing to maintain anti-money laundering controls. He served just 4 months in prison before Trump pardoned him. The same Binance that spent $800,000 lobbying the Trump administration. The same exchange that helped build Trump's crypto platform. Elizabeth Holmes has no such leverage. But here's where it gets strategic. Since August 2025, just months before filing her petition, Elizabeth Holmes began posting on X, formerly Twitter. Not just random posts. Specific support for President Trump. His policies, his Make America Healthy Again initiative. Bay Area crisis management consultant Sam Singer told the Daily Mail, Elizabeth Holmes is openly seeking a pardon from President Trump, hoping that by a combination of sucking up and perhaps digital fawning that she will get it. Digital fawning? A calculated political strategy from a woman who once convinced the most powerful people in America she'd revolutionized healthcare. But here's what makes this petition so critical for Holmes. In May 2023, the judge ordered Elizabeth Holmes to pay $452 million in restitution to the victim she defrauded. If Trump grants a commutation, reducing her sentence, she still owes that $452 million. She's still on probation, still a convicted felon. But if he grants a full pardon, that restitution obligation could disappear entirely. Her criminal record could be wiped clean. She could walk away from this whole thing free. Not everyone is staying silent. Patients who received false cancer results, investors who lost their retirement savings, Walgreens executives who trusted her partnership, all watching, all waiting to see if justice will be overturned. Tyler Shultz, the whistleblower who risked his family relationships to expose the fraud, remains adamant. She deserves every day of that sentence. The White House, when asked about the Holmes petition, said it does not comment on potential clemency requests and that the president is the final decider on all pardons or commutations. As of today, the petition is listed in the Department of Justice Clemency database as pending.
Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes has officially asked President Trump to commute her sentence. Holmes was convicted of wire fraud while running Theranos, a blood testing company she founded in Palo Alto using technology that did not work as promised. In 2022, she was sentenced to 11 years for defrauding investors. The U.S. Justice Department currently lists the status of her request as pending.
But the clemency petition isn't the only shocking part of this story. While Elizabeth Holmes sits in prison, her romantic partner, Billy Evans, has launched a new health tech startup. It's called Hemanthus, Greek for blood flower, a blood testing company. The company has raised $3.5 million. They're targeting 15 million more. They're using laser technology and AI. And the device? It looks eerily similar to the Edison machine. According to reports, investor materials for Hemanthus make no mention of Elizabeth Holmes, no mention of Billy Evans being her partner, no mention of any connection to Theranos. And here's the genius, or the horror, depending on how you see it. Hemanthus started with pet diagnostics. Because animals don't sue. And Elizabeth Holmes herself? According to an interview she gave to People magazine, she's not sitting idle in prison. She's writing new inventions, new patents, planning her return to the biotech industry the moment she's released. During the day, she works as a reentry clerk, earning 31 cents per hour. So will President Trump grant her clemency? Legal experts are divided. Some say her case fits Trump's pattern of pardoning white-collar executives. Others note she lacks the political connections and financial leverage that CZ had with Binance. Elizabeth Holmes is currently scheduled for release on December 30th, 2031. Unless the president decides otherwise. The petition is pending. The president hasn't decided, and the world is watching to see if one of history's biggest fraudsters walks free, or if justice will actually be served. So what do we take away from the Theranos story? Elizabeth Holmes convinced some of the most powerful people in the world that she had revolutionized medicine. She raised $700 million. She built a $9 billion company. She endangered patients with fake blood tests. Real people trusted Theranos with their health, and they got false information that could have killed them. Investors trusted her with their money, and they lost it all. The Theranos scandal is a reminder. Charisma is not competence. A good story is not the same as a good product. And when lives are on the line, the truth matters. But here's what terrifies me. While Elizabeth Holmes sits in prison, her partner is building the same type of company, with the same promises, hiding her involvement, and she might get a presidential pardon that erases it all, unless the president decides she's served enough time. This is Exposure Bureau, where we expose the world's most audacious frauds. For more stories, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss it. And tell me, should Trump pardon Elizabeth Holmes? Does she deserve a second chance? Or should she serve every single day? Let me know in the comments.